I found the recordings by accident. That's the part still bothers me. Not the betrayal, the accident of it. The smart speaker in my kitchen had been recording every conversation in that room for 3 weeks before I ever thought to check it. I only opened the app because I wanted a playlist while I finished hemming my husband's tuxedo jacket for his company's 20th anniversary gala. What I found instead was my husband's voice and my best friend's voice, calmly discussing exactly how to get me out of a house I'd owned since before our marriage, and exactly when Renata would be moving in to replace me. I didn't scream. I didn't confront anyone that night. I finished the jacket. I called a lawyer instead. 3 weeks later, in front of every business partner and guest in that ballroom, Marcus raised his glass next to Renata and toasted a new beginning. And that's when I walked up, took the microphone, and pressed play on 11 seconds of audio neither of them ever thought I'd hear. If you want to know exactly what happened after that, stay with me because I'm about to tell you everything, starting from the beginning, the fitting room, 3 months earlier, before I knew any of this was coming. The needle went through the wool at the same angle it always did, 45 degrees, 3/8 of an inch, pulled taut but not tight. I'd made that motion so many thousand times my hand didn't need my eyes anymore. Which was good, because my eyes were on the clock on the stove, 9:47 p.m., and Marcus still wasn't home. I ran my hand along the lapel of the jacket pinned to the dress form in what used to be our dining room and is now, permanently, my workroom. Navy, midnight, really, a fabric so dark it drinks the light instead of throwing it back. 3 months of fittings for one jacket. Marcus's company turns 20 this fall, and he wanted, in his words, something that photographs like money. I used to have a shop for this. Cross and Company Bespoke, on Fillmore, for 100 square feet with good light and a bell over the door. I chose myself. I closed it 9 years ago. The year Marcus's consulting firm went from 3 employees crammed into a WeWork to 40 people and a real office with his name on the glass. Somebody had to run the house, chase the invoices, remember which partner's wife was allergic to shellfish. I told myself it was temporary. I've stopped believing that the way I used to. I picked the pins out of my mouth one at a time and set them in the magnetic dish, the same dish I've had since I was 26, working the alteration counter at a shop in the garment district before I had a shop of my own. My mother gave it to me. Her handwriting is still on the bottom in silver marker, Vivian's. Don't lose it. I hadn't made a jacket like this since my own shop closed. I'd made plenty since for Marcus, mostly birthdays and galas, but never one that mattered this much to him. 20 years. He kept saying the number, like it was a fact about the weather, inevitable. Earned. 20 years, Viv. Grant's flying in from Chicago. This has to be right. The kitchen speaker was playing something low, mostly strings, nothing with words to distract me from counting stitches. Dahlia gave me that speaker 2 years ago, rolling her eyes at me for still using a Bluetooth dock from 2015. Just let it live in the kitchen, and Viv, it's smart. It listens for you. I'd laughed at that. It listens for you. I didn't think about what that meant. Why would I? Dahlia is Marcus's niece, though by now I think of her as mine more than his. She was 17 when her mother, Marcus's sister, died of an aneurysm in a parking lot in Fresno, and there wasn't real money for the state school she'd gotten into, not after the funeral and the bills that came due even though nothing had saved her. I paid the tuition. For years. Then 2 more for a master's she's still finishing. Marcus knew about it. He never once asked how much. Renata knew too. Renata knows almost everything about my life, because for 11 years she has been the person I called first before Marcus most days, if I'm honest. We met at a bridal expo where I was doing alterations and she was working the microphone, and something about the way she filled a room with her voice made me want to be near her. I was there when her father died. I was there when her second engagement fell apart in a parking garage in Sausalito. When Dahlia needed to practice her graduation speech, it was Renata's living room. She used better acoustics, Renata said, and a mirror the right height. 3 chairs at that table, over the years. All 3 of them wearing something I made. I heard the garage door at 10:15 and Marcus came in still in his suit, tie loosened, smelling faintly of impatience, the way he does when a day's gone sideways. He kissed the top of my head, not my mouth, and looked at the jacket on the form the way you'd look at a car you were about to buy. That's really good. He turned it slightly toward the light. Renata was asking today if it'd be ready in time. I told her you never miss a deadline. I kept my eyes on the hem, pressing it flat with my thumbnail. She asked you that? When? This afternoon, I think. She called about the seating chart. He shrugged out of his jacket and draped it over a kitchen chair, careless, the way he never treats anything I make for him. She wanted to know if you'd finished before she locks the program for Friday. Friday. The gala wasn't until the following Friday, 9 days out. Renata was locking a program, she'd said, for an event I hadn't given her a single detail about that week. I hadn't told her the fitting schedule. I hadn't told Marcus either, not exactly. I'd only said it out loud to myself once, days ago, alone in this kitchen with the speaker listening the way it always listened, patient, indifferent, recording nothing I thought mattered. Viv. Marcus was already at the fridge, pouring water, not looking at me. You okay?
Fine, I said.
Just counting stitches. I stood there with a pin between my fingers, needles still threaded, and for a second I honestly couldn't remember what I'd been about to sew. I needed a new pin. That's all. That's what I told myself as I crossed to the sewing kit, set the threaded needle down carefully, and picked up my water glass with a hand that wasn't quite steady. The wedding jacket lining still needed basting. I made myself finish it. 3 days passed before the next thing happened, and it was small enough that I almost let it go. Marcus came home at 10:15 that night, later than usual, from what he called a client dinner at the Hendricks Group, and when I hugged him at the door, the collar of his shirt carried something floral and warm, vanilla and orange blossom, the kind of scent that clings to fabric for hours. I knew it because I'd bought that exact bottle for Renata 2 Christmases ago. Jo Malone, the orange blossom one. I'd wrapped it myself in gold paper because she said gift wrap from a store looked lazy. Long dinner, I said, hanging up his coat. Client wanted to talk expansion numbers into dessert.
He loosened his tie.
You know how Whitfield's team gets when spreadsheets come out. I did not say the thing sitting in my mouth. I only nodded and went to check on the rice. 2 days after that, my phone rang while I was cutting a pattern for a client's daughter's christening gown. Chalk dust on my fingers. Renata's name lit the screen. Vivi, I need 10 minutes on the gala run of show, she said, breathless the way she got when she wanted something. Marcus said the toast should land right after the appetizers clear, not before. Is that still the plan, or did he move it back to align with when Grant usually leaves early? I set the chalk down. How do you know Grant leaves early? A beat. Just long enough. Marcus mentioned it once. You know how he talks shop. I didn't know how he talked shop. He talked shop to me, at our kitchen island, after 2 glasses of wine, complaining about Grant Whitfield's habit of vanishing early because of his dog walker. I had never once repeated that detail to Renata. I was fairly sure I'd never repeated it to anyone. Sure, I said. 9's fine. After appetizers. I hung up and stood in my cutting room a moment longer than the pattern required. That night I tried it straight, because indirect hadn't gotten me anywhere. Over dinner, chicken thighs, the lemon ones he liked, I set my fork down and said, Renata knew about Grant's dog walker thing. The early exit habit. Marcus didn't look up right away. When he did, something in his face had already closed. So, I never told her that. I probably mentioned it in some group text. Or she's met Grant enough times to notice a pattern. He picked his fork back up, too quickly. Is this an actual conversation? Or are you doing the thing again? What thing? The thing where you decide something's wrong, and then go looking for reasons it's true. He said it flat, like a diagnosis he'd made peace with a long time ago. You've been like this for weeks, Viv. Reading into texts. Reading into who calls who. It's exhausting, if I'm honest.
Exhausting.
I turned the word over while I chewed, not tasting the lemon anymore. He'd never used that word about me before. Not once in 19 years. I'm not reading into anything, I said. I asked a question. You're asking a lot of questions lately. He wiped his mouth, folded the napkin with more care than the moment needed. Some of us are trying to get through a stressful few weeks before this gala without a whole investigation at the dinner table. Investigation. That word I filed away too. I didn't push further that night. I told myself it wasn't infidelity I was circling. Marcus barely looked at his phone around me. No secretive angle to the screen. No new gym habit. None of the tells I'd have recognized from movies or from my own mother's stories about my father. What I felt instead was something colder and less nameable, like walking into a room where the furniture has been moved 2 inches and you can't say which pieces. The fitting 3 days later should have settled me. Marcus stood on the small platform in the sewing room, what used to be our dining room, before I filled it with dress forms and a cutting table, while I measured his shoulders for the jacket's final adjustment, 3 months into the work on that vest now. My tape sat flat across his back, thumb pressed to hold the 0 point, and I was calling out numbers under my breath the way I always did, the way that used to make him tease me about talking to fabric like it could hear me. His phone buzzed against the platform ledge. He glanced down, and something shifted in his shoulders under my hands, a small tightening, the kind of flinch a tailor learns to read in a body before the person even knows they've made it. "I need to take this," he said, already stepping down before I'd finished pinning the seam. "Marcus, I'm mid-measurement." He was already in the hallway, voice dropping low, one hand cupped around the phone like a man shielding a match from wind. I stood there holding my tape measure, one end pinned to his half-marked shoulder line, the other end trailing loose in my hand, and I could not make out a single word he said. Just the register of it, quiet, quick, familiar in a way that had nothing to do with client dinners. It was becoming a habit now, this stepping out to take calls, always the hallway, always the low voice. I finished pinning the jacket without him. It fit perfectly on the empty air of the platform, shoulders square, exactly where they'd be on a man who wasn't in the room. That night, once the house had gone quiet and Marcus was asleep upstairs, I stood in the kitchen wanting nothing more than the old playlist I used to sew to, the one Dahlia built for me 2 years ago, the year she gave me that speaker, full of Ella and Nina, and nothing complicated. I picked up my phone, opened the app to cast it to the counter, and my thumb landed wrong on the menu. A list unrolled down the screen. Dozens of entries, each one time-stamped, each one labeled simply recording. Automatic transcription available, going back weeks. I had never once told this speaker to record anything in its life. I sat on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet, laptop balanced on my knees, and I did not move for a long time. The entries went back 6 weeks. I clicked the oldest one first, the way you peel a bandage from the corner you know will hurt least. It was nothing. Marcus asking the speaker to set a timer for pasta, my own voice humming along to a radio station. Ordinary. I almost closed the laptop right there and told myself the whole list was static, noise the device caught because Dahlia had set the sensitivity too high when she installed it 2 years ago, back when she gave it to me as a birthday gift, and laughed that I'd finally have music while I hemmed sleeves. Then I found the one from March 14th, 11:40 a.m. A Tuesday. I remembered that Tuesday because I'd been at the shop annex 3 blocks over, dropping off a client's fitted trousers before his flight to Denver. I pressed play. "She's in the back of the shop until at least noon," she told me herself. Renata's voice, close and warm, like she was leaning into the microphone of her own phone. "You have time." I don't love doing it like this. Marcus, and I knew that particular flatness in him, the tone he used when he'd already decided something and just needed to hear himself object to it once before agreeing. "You're not doing anything. You're just not correcting an assumption." A pause, ice against glass. She was drinking something. "Everyone already thinks the house is yours. It's your name on the mailbox. Your car in the driveway. Nobody's going to ask to see a deed, Marcus." My hands had gone very still on the trackpad. I did not cry. I remember being almost clinical about that fact, noting it the way I'd note a hem that hung a half-inch too long. Interesting, needs attention, not yet an emergency. I kept listening. "After the gala," Renata went on, "you tell her you need space. Not a fight. Just space. Something clean. Give her 3 weeks to find a place, help her move a few boxes if you have to, look generous doing it." Another sip. "And I'll be there in April." You make it sound easy. It is easy. She's not going to lawyer up over a marriage she thinks is working. She's going to cry in the kitchen with that ridiculous speaker on, and sew you something nice for the going away, and by the time she figures out what happened, I'll already have my toothbrush in your bathroom. I had, In fact, been crying in that kitchen more than once over the past month, with music playing. I just hadn't known I had an audience for it. There was a laugh then, Renata's laugh, the one I'd always loved, the one that used to make strangers at dinner parties turn their heads toward our table because it sounded like something worth being near. It sounded different now. Sharper at the edges, like a seam cut with dull scissors. She's sweet, Marcus. I mean that. But she's a seamstress. She measures inseams for a living. She is not going to outmaneuver either of us. I paused the recording there and set the laptop on the tile floor, screen still glowing. I looked at my own hands, the calluses on my right index finger from 30 years of thimble work, the small permanent dent where the scissors sat. A seamstress. Cross and Company Bespoke had been my name on the window for 11 years before I closed it to build Marcus's company with him. 11 years of my own hands, my own ledger, my own door. I thought about that dent in my finger, and I did not feel small. I felt like someone recalibrating a machine that had been running wrong for a while and had just found the part that was slipping. I picked the laptop back up and kept going. There were 4 more calls after that one spread across the following weeks, each one a little more specific. Renata asking whether Marcus had moved anything yet. I didn't know what that meant. Not then, and the not knowing sat in my chest like a swallowed stone. Marcus complaining once that I'd asked him something too directly over dinner, that I was getting sensitive, the same word he'd used to my face 2 nights before, except now I understood it wasn't an observation. It was a status report. Then, in the most recent recording, dated 4 days earlier, Renata's voice came through clearer than the others, like she was standing right in the kitchen instead of wherever she actually was. "What about the house?" Marcus asked. "If it comes up before April. If someone at the bank." "Don't worry about the house paperwork," Renata said, and I heard something settle into place in her voice, something almost bored, the tone of a woman closing a file she'd already finished reading. "The house paperwork. Leave it to me." I sat very still with that sentence. The refrigerator hummed. The faucet dripped once, twice, into the sink behind me. Leave it to me. As if she'd already started something. As if somewhere, right now, a document had her name typed into a field that should have had mine, or Marcus's, or no one's at all until the 3 of us fought it out in a room with a lawyer between us. Renata wasn't just waiting for Marcus to hand her a life. She was already reaching for the paper that would make it hers. And I didn't even know yet whose name was actually on that paper. I made a copy of the recordings that morning, one drive in my sewing bag, one uploaded to an account Marcus didn't know existed. Then I called Elena Ruiz. Her office was on the 4th floor of a converted mill building, the kind with exposed brick and windows that didn't quite close all the way. I sat across from her desk with my coat still on. She had a legal pad in front of her and a pen she didn't uncap for the first 10 minutes. "Start with the house," she said. "Not the recordings. The house first. It's on Larkspur. I bought it 18 months before I married Marcus. I ran the shop out of the front 2 rooms for 11 years, until I closed it." "Deeds in your name alone?" "As far as I know." "You don't know?" I didn't. 9 years of being someone's wife had a way of blurring what used to be certain. Elena pulled up the county records site on her monitor, typed the address, and turned the screen toward me. Cross, Vivian M., sole owner. Recorded 18 months before the wedding. I looked at it longer than I needed to. My own name, alone. On a line that had somehow felt shared for 9 years. "He has no claim," Elena said. "Not through the marriage. Not unless you did something to change that, a refinance, a quitclaim, anything with both names on the new instrument." The word refinance landed in my stomach like a drop stitch. "He gave me papers," I said. "Maybe 5 weeks ago. He said the rate had dropped, and it would save us money if we moved fast, before the lender pulled the offer. He had them in a manila folder. He wanted me to sign that night." Elena capped and uncapped the pen once. "Did you sign?" I told him I wanted to read it first. He got short with me, said I was slowing down a real opportunity to save money for the family. I put it in the drawer by the stairs and never opened the folder again. I forgot about it, honestly. There was a lot going on with the gala. "Do you still have it?" "I think so." "Find it tonight," she said. "Every page. Before you sign anything ever that Marcus hands you, bring it to me first. I don't care if it's a birthday card. I almost laughed. I didn't. She uncapped the pen now, finally, and started writing. Tell me about the recordings. I told her. The app on my phone, the list of saved clips going back weeks, the two voices I knew better than my own. She listened without interrupting, and when I got to the part where Renata said the paperwork, I'll handle it, Elena's pen stopped moving. That's the part that worries me, she said. Not because it proves anything on its own, because it tells me she's already trying. Trying what? I don't know yet. Could be nothing. Could be her pushing Marcus to get something drawn up before the party. Could be more than that. You said she used to work in event planning, vendor contracts, that kind of thing? For 6 years. Before she went into hosting full-time. Then she knows how to read a contract better than most people who aren't lawyers. Elena set the pen down. Which brings me to the other thing. This state requires all-party consent for recorded conversations. Every person on that call would need to have agreed to be recorded, or the recording isn't just inadmissible. Using it could expose you to liability. I need you to hear that clearly, Vivian. What you have is not, on its own, a courtroom weapon. It might not even be a legal one at a podium in front of 100 people. The room went quiet enough that I heard the radiator ticking against the wall. So it's worthless, I said. I didn't say worthless. I said it's not what you think it is yet. We're going to find out exactly what it can and can't do, and until we do, you don't play it for anyone. Not Marcus, not a friend, not a lawyer at a dinner party who thinks they know the statute. Just me. I nodded, though something in me had already started building a plan around that recording, and hearing it might not hold up felt like watching a beam get pulled out from under a house I was still building. One more thing, Elena said, walking me to the door. Whatever the gala turns into, and I have a feeling you already have some picture of that in your head, the house needs to be locked down first. I want copies of the deed, the original mortgage payoff if there was one, anything showing continuous ownership in your name. Bring it Thursday. Thursday, I repeated. 5 days before the party. I drove home with the window cracked, the cold air doing what it usually did for me, which was nothing at all that night. When I got in, I went straight to the drawer by the stairs, the one with the takeout menus and the spare keys, and, underneath a coupon booklet, a manila folder I hadn't opened since the night Marcus handed it to me with a look I'd mistaken for tiredness. I sat on the bottom stair and went through it page by page. Loan disclosures, an amortization table, a notary block, blank, waiting. Then, on page 11, a line I read 3 times to be sure I wasn't inventing it, a transfer of beneficial interest, granting an undivided 1/2 share of the property at 214 Larkspur Court to Marcus A. Cross. Beneath it, a signature line with my name typed under a blank space, waiting for me to fill it in. I set the pages down and got back to work. Not because I wasn't shaking, because I needed my hands busy while my head caught up, and there is nothing that steadies a hand faster than a seam that has to be exactly straight. 2 days later, Dahlia let herself in through the shop annex door with her key, the way she'd done every Thursday since she was 18. Cross and Company Bespoke had been closed for 11 years, but the old fitting room off my dining area still had good light, and Dahlia still liked to sit on the stool by the window and pretend she was learning the trade instead of just keeping me company. "You're quiet," she said, dropping her bag on the cutting table. "I'm countin'." I had pins in my mouth, working the hem of Marcus's trouser leg. 9 days to the gala. 9 days, and the only person in this house who didn't know what was coming was Marcus. Dahlia picked up a spool of thread, turned it over in her fingers the way she did when she was working up to something. I'd watched her do this since she was 14, the semester her mother stopped paying tuition, and I started. "Aunt Viv." She wasn't looking at me. "Can I tell you something and you not be mad?" I took the pins out of my mouth. "I'm not going to be mad at you. Renata asked me to do something a few weeks ago. For the gala planning, she said." Dahlia turned the spool again. She wanted me to grab some papers from Uncle Marcus's file cabinet in the study. The metal one, not his desk. And she asked if I knew the code to his safe. The room got very still. Outside, a car passed on Larkspur Court, tires hissing on wet asphalt. Did you give her the code?
No.
I don't know it. I told her I didn't and she got weird about it. Kind of annoyed, and then she laughed it off, said never mind. It wasn't important. Dahlia finally looked at me. I didn't think about it again until last week. Then I heard her on the phone in the kitchen and something about the way she said your name, I don't know. It sat wrong. I set the trousers across my lap and pressed my palm flat against the fabric, the way I do when I need a second to not say the wrong thing. What did she say? Exactly, if you remember. She said, Vivian doesn't need to know anything until it's finalized. Dahlia's face had gone careful, the way it did when she was watching for how much damage her words were doing. I told myself it was probably about the seating chart or something, but it didn't sound like seating chart. It sounded like a person talking about a person. I let it sit rather than chase it. I picked the pins back up. You didn't do anything wrong, I said. Asking you for a safe code and a file cabinet key isn't planning a seating chart. I know. That's why I'm telling you. She exhaled, some of the tightness leaving her shoulders. I love Uncle Marcus. But you're the one who paid for my books when Mom couldn't. You drove 2 hours to my graduation and sat through a ceremony that ran 4 hours because you said I only walk once. Her voice caught, just slightly, and she covered it by reaching for the seam ripper on the table, turning it over instead of the thread. I'm not choosing a side because it's easy. I'm choosing the side that's true. I didn't answer that right away. There's a particular kind of quiet that comes after someone tells you they see you clearly, and I've learned not to fill it too fast. There's more, Dahlia said after a moment. She's having a dress made. For the gala. I saw it. She had me pick up a garment bag from the courier for her last week because her building doesn't allow deliveries after 6. Deep green, floor length, the kind of dress you wear when you want every camera in the room pointed at you. She hesitated. She called it her debut. I thought that was a strange word for a company anniversary party. A debut, I repeated. As in, a first appearance. That's what I thought too. Weird thing to call it, right? Unless it's not about the party at all. I threaded a needle without looking down, muscle memory doing the work my eyes couldn't. First appearance of something new. The moment a person steps forward and asks the room to see her differently than it did a moment before. Thank you for telling me, I said. All of it. You're not surprised. She said it slowly, watching my face. I'm not as surprised as I'd like to be. We worked in silence after that, needle and thread. The two of us bent over the same table the way we had 100 times before, except that every other time, it had just been fabric between us, and now it was something closer to a plan. She threaded buttons onto a card while I finished the hem, and for a while the only sound was the small tick of pins going into the cushion, comfortable, familiar, almost enough to make me forget what we were actually talking about. Then Dahlia set down the button card. There's one more thing. I probably shouldn't say it, because I wasn't supposed to hear it, but she stopped, chewed the inside of her cheek. Renata told me, kind of bragging, that she'd locked everything down with Marcus. Her words. That after the party, it's official. Official, I said carefully. Her word or yours? Hers. She said it like it was already decided. Dahlia glanced at the calendar pinned to my corkboard, the red circle around the date of the gala. Aunt Viv. That's only 5 days from now. The pins go in fast when your hands know the work. I set the jacket over the dress form in what used to be our dining room and pinned the left lapel first, the way I always start. 9 days out. The wool was a deep charcoal herringbone English cloth, the kind that holds a line even when the man inside it doesn't. I'd cut it in April. I'd fit it 3 times since. There was nothing left to fix except my own head. I called Elena at 9 that morning, cutting thread with my teeth while I talked. I need the recordings pulled clean, I said. Dates, timestamps, nothing edited. I have a tech who does forensic audio for custody cases, Elena said. She'll timestamp everything. Verify the files haven't been altered. That matters if this ever goes anywhere formal. Vivian, are you sure about Friday? I'm sure about the house, I said. I'm still deciding about Friday. That was a lie. I decided the night I heard Renata say the paperwork, I'll handle that. I just hadn't told anyone the shape of it yet, because saying it out loud made it real, And I wasn't ready to be a woman who did this until I'd finished being a woman who sewed a flawless jacket for the man leaving her. I drove to the shredding place off Route 9 that afternoon, the one with the industrial bin out back, and fed page 11 of Marcus's transfer document through a machine that ate it in 4 seconds. I'd photographed it for Elena's server first. Then I went home and canceled the notary appointment Marcus had helpfully put on the shared calendar for the following Tuesday. I changed the password on the county recorder portal. I called the bank that afternoon, phone wedged against my shoulder while I basted a seam. "I need to ask something," I said. "Can anyone add a name to a deed without my signature present? Without me even knowing?" "No, ma'am," the woman said, and I heard her tapping something. "Never without you. Your name's the only one on file, and it predates the marriage by 18 months, so no, nobody touches that without you in the room." "Good," I said. "Thank you." I hung up and stood in my kitchen for a second, one hand flat on the counter, letting that land. 18 months before the wedding. He'd never once asked to see the deed. He'd just assumed. Marcus came home at 6:40 that evening, tie loosened, and found me steaming the jacket shoulders on the dress form. "That's not the same one from Sunday," he said. "It's the same one." I opened the sleeve heads a 1/4 inch. "You've been favoring your left arm since the tennis thing." He came and stood behind me, hands on my shoulders, and looked at the jacket in the mirror like it was already on him. "It's good, Viv. It's really good." "It should be. It's had 3 months." "You always did the best work when you cared," he said, and I felt the words land somewhere just under my ribs, sharp and unintentional, the way a compliment can be a wound if you already know what it's covering. "I care about a lot of things," I said and smiled, and went to get the trousers off the hanger. He tried them on in the hallway light. I knelt at his cuff with a wrist full of pins, chalk dust on my knuckles, and marked the break exactly where it needed to sit, a 1/2 inch above the shoe, the way he liked it for a room full of cameras. His phone buzzed twice on the side table. He didn't reach for it. That was new. A month ago, he'd have had it in his hand before the second buzz finished. "You're not going to check that?" I asked, mouthful of pins. "It can wait," he said, looking down at me instead of the phone, and something in his face was almost soft, almost like the man I'd married 11 years ago in a courthouse with Renata standing behind us holding both our coats. I let myself feel that for exactly 1 breath. Then I went back to the hem. Dahlia stopped by that Wednesday with 2 coffees, set one down on my cutting table, and picked up the seam ripper without being asked. She always found something to do with her hands when she was working up to a question. "You're being really calm about all this," she said, not looking at me, picking at a loose thread on the form. "Like, scary calm." "I'm a tailor, Dahlia. Calm is the job." "That's not what I mean." She finally looked up. "I heard him on the phone last week. In the annex." He said April and after the gala in the same sentence, and it wasn't about a vacation. I kept my hands moving on the lapel. "What do you think it was about?" "I think you already know," she said, "and I think whatever you're doing with all these fittings isn't just fittings." She didn't ask again. She just picked the ripper back up and started working a seam that didn't need it, waiting to see if I'd hand her the truth.
I didn't, not yet.
But I didn't send her away either, and that told her enough. He came in for the final fitting the night before the gala, jacket only, no shirt yet, standing in front of the mirror I'd hung on the closet door for exactly this purpose. I checked the roll of the lapel, the drape across the back, the way the collar sat against his neck without a gap.
Perfect.
I'd made 100 jackets in my life, and this was, without argument, my best one, full canvas, hand-padded lapel, 31 individual stitches per buttonhole, because I'd stopped counting after that and just kept going out of habit. I smoothed the shoulder seam flat with both palms and didn't let myself think too hard about what it meant to make something this good for a man walking out the door in it. "Turn," I said. He turned. The jacket moved with him, like it had grown there. "You outdid yourself," he said, watching himself in the mirror, chin lifted a little, already rehearsing tomorrow's version of his own face. "After tomorrow night, everything's going to be different." "I know," I said. He caught my eye in the mirror and smiled, easy, certain, already half gone from this room in his head. He thought I meant the toast. The company. 20 years, a room full of investors, Grant Whitfield's signature waiting on a contract worth more than either of us used to make in 5 years combined. He had no idea what I meant. Elena had no idea what I meant. I let that hang for exactly 2 seconds before I smiled and told her it was nothing, just a private thought, and she laughed the way people laugh when they don't want to seem left out of something. That was 9 days ago. Tonight was supposed to be about none of that. Elena called at 8:52 p.m., which I noted because Elena Ruiz did not call after 8 unless something had gone wrong. I was standing in what used to be our dining room, the one I'd turned into a workshop, pressing the lapel of Marcus's finished vest with the iron on its lowest setting. I picked up on the second ring. "I need you to sit down," she said.
Y miró ninga lapel, Elena. I'm basically sitting.
I pulled the statute again. Twice, actually, because I didn't like it the first time. A pause, papers shifting somewhere on her end. Our state is all-party consent. Every person on that call has to know they're being recorded, or it's illegal to record it, and illegal to play it back publicly. If you stand up at that gala and press play, you're not just exposing Marcus and Renata. You're handing them a wiretapping complaint with your name on it. I set the iron down on its heel. The steam kept hissing into the empty room for a second after my hand let go, the only sound in the house besides my own pulse, which I could suddenly hear in my ears like something underwater. "So the recordings are worthless," I said. "Not worthless. Just not a weapon you can swing in front of 200 witnesses." Her voice softened, which was worse, somehow, than if she'd stayed clinical. "Vivian, I should have caught this before you built a whole plan around it." I looked at the vest on the dress form, the one I'd spent 3 months on, 31 stitches per buttonhole, my own hand shaking now for the first time in 9 days. "Then what was the point of any of it?" I said. "The backups. The lawyer. Tomorrow night." "The point," Elena said, "is that you still know the truth, and they still don't know you know it. That's not nothing. That's leverage if you use it differently." I didn't answer right away. I walked to the kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, and stood in front of the speaker on the counter, the one Dahlia gave me 2 years ago for my birthday, the one that had been listening this whole time without either of us meaning it to. It felt, for a second, like the only honest thing in the house. "Different how," I said. "You don't play the recording as proof. You use it to know exactly what to ask in front of exactly the right people. You put Marcus and Renata in a position where the only way out is to say it themselves. That's not illegal. That's just a conversation in public that goes the wrong way for them." She let that sit. "And bring every piece of paper on that house tomorrow. If Renata's been circling the deed, I want us 2 steps ahead of whatever she thinks she's about to file." I said I would. I hung up feeling less like a woman with a plan and more like someone standing at the edge of a pool she'd already jumped into, discovering only now that the water was shallower than she'd been told. My phone buzzed again 9 minutes later. Not Elena.
Dahlia.
"Aunt Renata just asked me something weird," the text said, and my stomach dropped before I'd even finished reading it. "She asked if you'd been acting different. If you knew anything about the timeline." I said no. I said you'd just been busy with the vest. She looked at me funny for like 3 seconds and then changed the subject. I read it twice. Then a third time, my thumb hovering over the screen. "Did she believe you?" I typed back. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "I think so. But Aunt V, she's not dumb. If she's asking me, she's asking somebody." I set the phone face down on the counter and stood very still, the way I used to stand over a cutting table when one wrong motion could ruin 4 yards of silk. Renata had 6 years running vendor contracts before she ever picked up a microphone, timelines, paperwork, the kind of mind that noticed when something didn't line up. If she was circling Dahlia with questions like that, she wasn't circling out of idle nerves. She was checking her own perimeter. "Don't text me again about this tonight," I typed to Dahlia. "Just act normal. If she asks anything else, come find me in person, not on the phone." "Okay. Love you, Aunt V. You've got this." I thought about calling the whole thing off. Sitting through the gala as the smiling wife, letting Marcus and Renata have their April, walking away quietly with the house and nothing else. For about 4 minutes, standing in my own kitchen, that felt like the safer version of my life. Then I picked the vest back up off the dress form and finished the lapel. I was folding it into the garment bag, smoothing the shoulders flat the way I always did, when my phone lit up on the counter behind me. Not Elena. Not Dahlia. A thread I hadn't seen open in months. The old group chat. The one from Renata's 35th birthday. 3 names still listed at the top. Renata, Marcus, me. One new message, sent 11 seconds ago, clearly meant for somewhere else entirely. Here's to our fresh start. I closed the phone and set it face down on the counter. The Renwick Hotel ballroom was already loud through the earpiece Dahlia had rigged for me, 3 hours before I'd even hear it in person. 20 years of cross-logistics group, printed in brushed gold on a banner 40 feet wide, and beneath it a string quartet tuning up next to a champagne tower that caught the light like something underwater. By 7 o'clock, I was standing at the edge of it in a navy dress I'd made myself, watching 400 people find their table cards. You look like you're casing the room, Dahlia said, sliding up beside me with a lanyard that read AV guest. She'd talked her way into running sound for the night, officially as a favor to the events company, unofficially because I'd asked her to. I am casing the room. Grant Whitfield's at table 3, front, left of the stage. I checked twice. She kept her voice light, her eyes on her tablet. The house system feeds through the booth. I can patch anything you hand me straight to the main speakers, no delay. Anything I hand you. Anything. She looked up at me then, just for a second, and there was nothing 22 about her expression. I've got it cued. Just say when. Across the room, Marcus was shaking hands with a man in a gray suit, and even from 30 feet away, I could see the vest sit exactly where I'd built it to sit. No pull across the shoulders, no bunch at the waist, the lapel breaking clean against his collarbone. 3 months of my hands in that fabric. 31 stitches in each buttonhole, because I don't know how to do fewer. Vivian. Grant Whitfield's voice, warm and a little too loud, the way men get after one glass of something expensive. He took my hand in both of his. Vivian Cross. Marcus tells me you made that suit. I don't believe him. Nobody's suit fits like that. I made it. Well. He glanced past me toward Marcus, still working the room. I've been in this business 30 years. I know a made man from a self-made one. Your husband's the second kind. 20 years, and he's asking me to put another $8 million behind him for the West Coast expansion. I told my board, you don't bet against a man whose wife sews like that. Says something about the house. I smiled the smile I'd practiced saying nothing behind for 9 days. It says something. He laughed, delighted, and moved off toward the bar, and I filed one fact away carefully. Grant Whitfield believed the house was a house of 2. He would learn otherwise tonight, and he would learn it standing 3 feet from a live microphone. Renata found me 20 minutes later, and the dress Dahlia had described did not undersell her. Deep green, cut close through the ribs, catching the chandelier light every time she turned her head, which she did often, like a woman checking her own reflection in 100 small mirrors made of other people's eyes. Vivian. She kissed the air beside my cheek. Her perfume was the one I'd given her for her 37th birthday, 3 bottles, because she'd said she loved it. You clean up. I mean that. This dress, is this yours? It's mine. Of course it is. She touched the sleeve, assessing, the way she used to assess fabric samples with me back, when we still did that together. You should sell to more people like me. I could send you clients. I don't think I want her clients, Renata. She laughed like I'd made a joke, and her eyes went past me, quick, toward the stage where a stagehand was setting a second microphone stand beside the podium. I'm doing a little toast tonight. Just something short for Marcus for the 20 years. You'll like it. I'm sure I will. She squeezed my arm and moved off toward the booth to check her cue with the event coordinator, and I watched her go, and somewhere under my ribs a small clean certainty settled into place. The kind I used to feel pinning a hem I already knew would fall right. Dahlia's voice came low through the earpiece. She's asking the coordinator to move her toast up. Wants it right after the 20-year video plays. Before dinner service. Copy that. Also, Marcus is looking for you. He wants a picture. Says something about the two of us, before it gets crazy. I found him by the gift table, and he put his arm around my waist for the photographer, and up close I could smell the wool of the vest warming against him, the smell of a thing I'd made with my own hands now wrapped around a man who had, for days ago on a recording I'd listened to 11 times, called me easy to handle if you time it right. He smiled for the camera. I smiled for the camera. The flash went off twice. You did good work on this, he murmured, adjusting his cuff, not quite looking at me. I mean it. Best suit I've owned. I know. Behind him, at table 3, Grant leaned toward the man beside him and gestured at Marcus with real warmth, the gesture of a man about to sign a paper he trusted. I watched Marcus catch the gesture, catch Grant's eye, and raise 2 fingers off his champagne glass in a small salute, and I understood, watching it, exactly how many people in this room he had already spent tonight in his head. The money, the woman, the house, the wife folded up small and put away like a receipt he no longer needed. The lights dimmed for the 20-year retrospective video, the room quieting into a low golden hush. Faces turned toward the screen where a much younger Marcus stood in front of a rented office with 3 employees and a folding table. I felt Dahlia's hand brush my elbow in the dark, a small silent signal, and I nodded once. When the video ended, the room erupted into applause, and Marcus and Renata climbed the 2 shallow steps to the stage together, her hand light on his forearm. Both of them lit gold under the spotlight, and a waiter pressed 2 flutes of champagne into their hands while 400 people watched. Renata raised her glass first, her voice carrying clean and bright through the house speakers. To Marcus, she said, and to 20 incredible years, and to everything that's still ahead. Marcus lifted his glass to meet hers, his eyes finding hers, and holding there a half-second too long for anyone who wasn't looking for it.
To a fresh start, he said.
I set my glass down on the nearest table, untouched, and started walking toward the stage. The microphone stand was still warm from the last speaker's grip when I reached it. Somewhere behind me a server was clearing champagne flutes off a linen tablecloth, glass ringing softly against a tray. I heard my own heartbeat before I heard the room go quiet. Thank you, I said into the microphone, and the sound system carried it further than I expected, out past the tables, out to the bar where Grant Whitfield stood with his own glass still raised. 20 years is a lot to celebrate. I don't want to take anything away from that. Marcus was still on the stage, 3 feet from me, the vest sitting perfectly across the shoulders, 31 stitches in each buttonhole, hand-finished, the collar rolling exactly the way I'd pinned it 3 months ago. He was smiling the smile he used for cameras. Renata stood beside him in blue silk, her glass still lifted halfway to her mouth. Since we're toasting to fresh starts tonight, I said, I thought I'd add one of my own. Marcus. Renata. Why don't you tell everyone what that fresh start actually looks like? The smile on Marcus's face didn't move, but something behind his eyes did. Vivian, what are you? April, I said. That was the month, wasn't it? You tell me you needed space. Renata would already have the address. Renata laughed, short and bright, pitched for the room. I have no idea what she's talking about. Vivian, honey, are you feeling all right? I looked at her the way I used to look at a hem that wouldn't lie flat. You told him the deed paperwork was handled.
4 days ago.
You said, and I'm quoting, the house, let me deal with it. The color left her face by degrees, not all at once. The way dye bleeds out of fabric left too long in the sun. Marcus's hand found the edge of the podium. This is insane, he said. You're standing up here, making accusations at my company's 20th anniversary. I know, I said. I thought about the timing too. I raised my hand toward the sound booth at the side of the room, where Dahlia stood with her earpiece in, one finger already resting on the laptop trackpad. Go ahead. The recording that came through the hall speakers wasn't long. 11 seconds. Marcus's voice, tinny with distance, caught by a kitchen speaker 2 years old, a gift from a niece who loved her aunt. I'll tell her I need space. She'll be gone by the time Renata's lease is up. Then Renata, laughing, closer to the microphone. She'll go quietly. She always does. She's just a tailor, Marcus. She irons things for a living. 300 people did not move. I let it sit there a second longer than I needed to, the way you let a seam settle before you press it. Somewhere near the back, a fork touched a plate, and the sound seemed enormous. That's not... Renata started, and her voice cracked on the second word. That's an old recording. That's... Context. You're missing the context. Then give me the context, I said. You had no right to record us, Marcus said, and his voice had lost the boardroom register entirely now, gone thin and fast. That's illegal. That's, Vivian, that's a felony in this state. You can't just... I didn't record anything, I said. My kitchen speaker did. The one Dahlia gave me. It's been listening since before either of you started planning this. I turned to him fully. You're the one who taught me people say what they really think when they think no one's home. Elena confirmed this morning it's admissible. One-party consent. My own kitchen. You should have checked before you started talking in it. You knew, Renata said, and now she turned on him, not me, her whole body swiveling toward Marcus like the accusation was a physical thing she could throw. You told me the paperwork was clean. You told me she'd never notice a co-ownership filing on a house she barely thinks about. I never said clean, Marcus snapped back at her. I said in progress. You're the one who told me you'd handled the notary. Because you asked me to. Don't stand there and act like this was my idea, Marcus. You're the one who wanted her out before your investors saw. Lower your voice, he hissed, and it was too late, because the room had already heard it. All of it, the accusation and the counter-accusation landing on top of each other like two liars scrambling for the same lifeboat. I let them finish. It took less time than I expected. Betrayal, once it starts eating itself, moves fast. For the record, I said, once the silence came back, the house on Larkspur Court has been in my name alone for 18 months longer than this marriage has existed. There was never a co-ownership to file. There was only page 11 of a document you were hoping I'd sign without reading, the one that would have handed you half of a house you never owned a stitch of. Marcus's mouth opened. Nothing came out of it. His eyes went to Dahlia at the sound booth, and I watched him understand, finally, whose side she'd been on the whole time. The niece he'd never once thought to worry about, the one who used to sit in the shop annex 3 blocks from here, hemming skirts for pocket money while he built a company he thought no one was watching. Across the room, I heard the small, precise click of a glass being set down on the bar. Grant Whitfield stood up from his stool, buttoned his jacket, and looked at Marcus with an expression I recognized, the one I used to give a client who'd tried to pay me with a check that would bounce. Marcus, Grant said, his voice pitched to reach every table in the room. I flew in from Seattle for this. Tomorrow morning, I was going to sign $8 million into your West Coast expansion. He let that land, the way I'd let the recording land, the whole ballroom holding its breath around him. I don't do business with men who lie in their own kitchens, Grant said. And I sure as hell don't do business with a man who can't keep his story straight in front of 300 witnesses. That deal is dead. Effective right now. Marcus's face went the color of the tablecloths. White, stripped, undone. And for the first time all night, he had absolutely nothing to say. The room had already started reorganizing itself around the wreckage. I watched it happen from 6 feet away, holding a champagne flute I had no intention of drinking. Grant Whitfield didn't storm out. That was the strange part. He straightened his jacket, said something quiet to the man beside him, his lawyer, I'd learn later, and the two of them simply walked toward the coat check like men leaving a movie they hadn't liked. Behind him, 2 other guests I recognized from the investor table did the same. One of them, a silver-haired woman named Priscilla Odom, stopped by our table just long enough to set down her unfinished drink. Thank you for the evening, she said to no one in particular and left. By the time the band picked the music back up, too fast, too bright, a decision someone made because silence was worse, Marcus was still standing on the platform with his hand around a microphone he'd forgotten to put down. Renata had already stepped off. I found her near the gift table 20 minutes later, her blue dress catching the light wrong now, like it knew something the rest of the room didn't. 2 women who'd been fawning over her earlier, she'd introduced them to me as my new circle back in April, were gone. I hadn't seen them leave. I don't think Renata had either. You planned that, she said when she saw me. not a question. I planned a lot of things, I said. You and Marcus planned this part. She laughed, but it didn't hold. You destroyed me for a house. No, I said. You tried to take one from me. I just declined to let you. She didn't have anything else. That was new. In 9 years, I had never once seen Renata Vale run out of words. Marcus called it a misunderstanding for 3 days. First from the house, standing in the kitchen doorway while I finished packing a box of his winter clothes, the down jacket, the 2 sweaters Dahlia had helped me pick out 4 Christmases ago. You didn't have to do it like that, he said. In front of Grant. In front of everyone. You didn't have to do it in my kitchen, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I'd promised myself that much, back in Elena's office, before any of this had a shape. The recordings were made where I live, Marcus. I didn't go looking in your office. I found them in mine. He tried anger next. On the second day, he came back with a folder, the same kind of folder as the refinancing papers from weeks before, and set it on the counter like it might still work if he just presented it right. That house is half mine, he said. 16 years of marriage. 18 months before it, I said. That's how old the deed is. You knew that once. You forgot it on purpose. He didn't have an answer to that. What he had, instead, was Elena's letter, which I slid across the counter to him, the one that laid it all out in language even a man convinced of his own righteousness couldn't misread. The deed, dated, notarized, my name only, the forged page 11 with its blank signature line, photographed, filed. Formal notice that any further attempt to transfer or encumber the property would go to the district attorney's office as attempted fraud. He read it twice, standing at the counter where I'd once measured shoulders and hemlines for a man I'd believed in completely. You had a lawyer before you had proof, he said quietly, like that was the betrayal. I had proof before I had a lawyer, I said. The lawyer just kept me from making a mistake. On the third day, he came without the folder. He sat down across from me at the kitchen table. In the same chair he'd sat in the night, he told me he was working late, and he said, I don't know how we got here. I did know. I'd heard exactly how, in his own voice, at 11:40 in the morning on the 14th of March, saying words I will never repeat back to him, because he already knows them better than I do. I slid the divorce petition across the table instead. Elena had filed it that morning.
Sign it, I said.
Or don't. It changes nothing about what the house is. He signed it. Dahlia showed up on the 4th day with 2 coffees and a bag of thread spools from the fabric district, the good silk kind I hadn't bought in years because I told myself I didn't need it anymore. Figured you'd start again eventually, she said, setting the bag on the table like it was nothing. Might as well have supplies. I asked her once if choosing my side had cost her anything with Marcus's family. She shrugged in that 22-year-old way that pretends things don't matter until you notice she's still standing in your kitchen 3 hours later, sorting spools by weight.
He's my uncle, she said.
You're the one who paid for my textbooks. Not everyone chose the way Dahlia did. Marcus's sister sent one text. Sorry this happened, hope you're okay, and never called again. A cousin who danced at our wedding asked, delicately, whether I still had contacts in the design world, which told me exactly what she wanted from the wreckage. I didn't answer either one. I was learning to tell, quickly now, the difference between people who showed up and people who only circled. Grant's lawyer sent one final piece of paperwork through Elena, formal, brief, nothing personal in it, which was somehow the most respectful thing anyone from that company had done all month. The $8 million West Coast expansion was gone. 3 other clients followed Grant out the door within the week, according to Dahlia, who still heard things through people who used to answer to Marcus. Renata's agency dropped her the following Tuesday. Not for cause, officially. Restructuring, the email said, according to a mutual acquaintance who couldn't resist telling me. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. My phone told me everything else on its own. 47 missed calls in 3 days. All from the same number I still hadn't deleted. Then one voicemail, left at 1:14 in the morning, her voice thinner than I'd ever heard it. You ruined me. I listened to it once, sitting at the kitchen table, with a good silk thread still in its bag beside me. Then I opened my phone, blocked the number, and walked to the counter where the smart speaker still sat, its small light glowing faintly in the dark, the speaker Dahlia had given me 2 years ago, back when a gift was just a gift. I reached over and switched it off. The morning light came through the bay window at 2:14, Larkspur Court, and landed on a bolt of ivory linen. I hadn't touched that fabric in 11 years. I stood in what used to be the dining room. The table was gone, sold back in March, along with the chairs Marcus always tilted back on when he talked too loud. In its place stood my cutting table, brought out of storage and refinished. A dress form waited near the window, like it had never left. "You're supposed to be steaming that, not staring at it," Dahlia said from the doorway. A garment bag hung over her arm. "I'm allowing myself 30 seconds. I picked up the linen. Cross and Company ran on fabric like this. Good bones. Doesn't lie to you." She hung the bag on the rack by the window. 3 dresses waited for hems. A groomsman's jacket needed a shoulder adjustment. And at the end of the rack hung a wedding gown, my first bridal commission since the shop closed. The bride was a nurse named Priscilla Odom. She'd found me through a coworker who'd seen Dahlia wearing one of my altered blazers at a hospital fundraiser. Word was moving the old way again, hand to hand, the way it used to before I stopped believing anyone would want it. "She called again this morning," Dahlia said, not looking at me. "Left a message this time instead of just hanging up. I didn't ask who. There was only one she left who called and hung up. Delete it or keep it? Delete it." I meant it, and I was a little surprised at how easily the words came out.
No bracing. No flinch.
6 months ago, a decision like that would have needed sitting with. Now it was just Tuesday. I threaded my needle instead of dwelling on Renata's voice waiting unheard in a phone I'd mostly stopped checking. Elena had warned me the harassment might not stop cleanly, that people like Renata rarely absorbed consequence quietly. She'd been right twice already this year. I made a note to forward the message to Elena's office later. Then I let it go, the way you let go of a hem you've already pinned correctly. No use fussing with what's already set. Dahlia pulled a stool up beside me and picked up the shoulder seam on the groomsman's jacket without being asked. Her stitches had gotten smaller these past months, more even. She still bit her lip in concentration exactly the way she had at 14. The summer I taught her to hem her own school skirts because her mother worked doubles and Marcus never noticed the length was wrong. "Grant Whitfield assistant called the shop line yesterday," she said. "Wanted to know if you do menswear again. Something about a rehearsal dinner." I kept my eyes on the needle. "Did you tell her I do?" "I told her you do everything now." That wasn't quite true, and it wasn't quite false either. I turned the front room into a proper workspace. New machine, better light, a small brass bell over the door that Dahlia had insisted on. It was the same bell from the old shop annex 3 blocks from where we used to be. I'd kept that bell in a drawer for 11 years without admitting why. The vest I'd made for Marcus, 31 stitches to a buttonhole, the collar sitting exactly the way I'd drafted it after 3 months of fittings, still hung in the back of my closet. I hadn't burned it. I hadn't given it away. It sat there the way a scar sits on skin. Proof of something no longer painful to look at, just a record. I'd loved him with real hands, the same hands that eventually pulled his own confession out of him in front of 100 witnesses. Both of those things had come from the same place in me. I no longer needed to pretend otherwise. By afternoon, the light had shifted west across the linen. Priscilla Odom's gown lay half-pinned on the form, waist taken in an inch, the bodice needing another 2 days of work. Dahlia held the fabric taut while I marked the new seam line in tailor's chalk. For a while, neither of us spoke. There was nothing that needed saying, just pins and thread and the particular quiet of 2 people doing careful work together. "You look happy," Dahlia said eventually, like she was noting something for the record. "I am." I didn't soften it or explain it. For years I'd poured myself into other people's lives until there was nothing left over for my own hands. Somewhere in the last 9 months, I had simply stopped. Not out of anger, out of arithmetic. There is only so much of a person to go around, and I had finally decided where mine belonged. I set the last pin, stepped back, and looked at the dress catching the light, My first bridal piece in 11 years, built in a room where I now owned every inch of the floor beneath it. I hadn't burned anything down. I had only stopped setting myself on fire to keep two people warm who were never going to stay for the winter.